Tonight we talk about the business of mining and construction. Recently, the city hosted Youth in Mining Summit. This is a platform for conversations between key players in the South African mining industry and young people to enhance the participation of young people or youth-owned businesses in the mining industry. In the construction sector, young people out there, let me talk about youth participation. Youth participation is poor, and this signals that there needs to be greater efforts by the government, corporates, and a whole lot of other successful people who are involved in the industry to bolster both industries. Joining me tonight to discuss these sectors is Mallence Bart-Williams, founder and creative director of Folorunsho, and Olebogeng Sentsho, the founder and head of operations at Yeabo Mining, given Montsioa, the founder of Montsioa Construction and Hardware, and also Mthokhozisi Xulu from SADC Youth in Mining. I'd like to welcome you guys to the show. I'm going to start with Olebogeng. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Very lovely. You're very vocal about your participation in the mining industry.
It's very important to me because I feel that as a member of the youth, or as a person in business, you can't just pick up at the tail end of the value chain. You have to be involved in every process. You have to be involved in policy, you need to be involved in development, you need to be involved in sustainable development, you need to be involved in actually keeping your industry alive.
Are there enough young people in the mining industry?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And how long have you been in it?
I've been here for 4 years.
Okay.
Yes.
You at your own company?
Yes, I have my own company. It's called Yeabo Mining.
And what exactly you guys do?
We do strategic waste management. That's basically the management of waste on the mine, and it's revenue generating waste. So we don't just do it like domestic waste, because domestic waste, you collect it and you throw it away. The waste we collect actually generates revenue when we sell it.
Mallence, Folorunsho, which industries are you guys involved in? What exactly do you guys do?
Actually, Folorunsho is a creative collective that focuses on art, creative aspects, and through these creative avenues generates opportunities for youngsters that were living in the streets.
Okay.
And in that regard, it really has nothing to do with mining.
Yeah.
Like ethical minerals is a venture I undertook quite recently that I got involved in that sector because I'm a person I'm motivated by reinstating balance where I feel there's a discrepancy and whether there are opportunities. And my nature is to do that in a way that also adds beauty to the landscape.
How can young people use entrepreneurship to make positive changes for our own continent without having to rely on the Western world or the Chinese and so forth?
Just tap into your resources, tap into the resources that are in the earth, in your earth. Own your resources, own your intellectual resources, and own your resources on your soil.
Do you own your resources, Mfana?
I would like to believe that we do because we decided as it's always been an issue with regards to young people being involved in construction. The industry players don't necessarily let you in, so we had to find a way to sort of create work for ourselves. And so we decided to become property developers, but we construct those houses ourselves, but we also use building materials that's used from recycled materials.
Oh, okay.
So we use cementless bricks to construct those particular houses.
Yeah.
So in essence, I think what we want to do is be able to own this particular system from beginning to end.
From the entire value chain.
Yeah, the entire value chain. Yeah. So it is challenging, but the prospects are huge.
Yeah. So you've started reaping the rewards, or you're still building?
We're still building. We're reaping the rewards here and there.
Yeah.
But I think the picture is much more bigger than where we are currently.
The relationship between construction and mining and young people, because I remember just a little over a decade ago, a lot of the elderly business people that we look up to and we respect so much, a lot of them actually were entrepreneurs, and they've been working so hard all these years, but we're a new face of entrepreneurship. We are the new guys that do not have the right surnames to get shares in certain companies because of. We are literally on the ground knocking on those doors and building our companies from scratch. Are young people in the mining sector and the construction sector using both of their skills, using entrepreneurship to make a difference?
young people are doing that and should be doing that, because like you say, we don't have the right surnames. Actually, I always say we are the second generation of transforming this African economy. Whereas maybe the older generation might have taken over from established businesses. Ours is to build a new layer or expand whatever the bigger economy has already laid. So young people have to be doing that. That's the only way to get into it, because some of these traditional deals of getting people in just for the sake of getting them in are no longer viable. So for you to have an edge as a young person, you need to demonstrate the value that you are adding to that operation. So if it's, whether it's development of new assets or expansion or innovation in the way that we process those minerals. So if a company would have been working in a particular way for many decades, the value of young people is for them to come in and demonstrate that there's a better way of mining or there's a better way of constructing. And the relationship obviously between mining and construction is that the infrastructure necessary and needed for mining operations is constructed. So the roads that lead to it, the water, the power, all comes from the construction industry that enables a mining company to reap the rewards of the minerals.
And
so there's a very strong connection.
And Mallence has got some interesting stats as far as mining is concerned. I mean, I know a little bit earlier I was chatting to my producer, Urafiwa, and she was asking me to actually dig deep into some of the factual information that you have about the mining industry, especially for a lot of young entrepreneurs out there that are watching as far as factual information is concerned.
I addressed the ethical standpoint. You know, globally, this usually focuses on environmental issues, human resource issues, but here in South Africa, it's my first time here. So for me, it's like entering Disneyland for the first time. It's ownership, you know, and ownership has been removed here, and it's a small minority that today benefits of the crimes committed by their fathers and grandfathers. And for me, that's an underlying unethical foundation, you know, from which to move forward. And the questions that are being raised, I feel, are at this point irrelevant. You know, we are fixing the roof while we are not really addressing the underlying issues of the foundation. The foundation is ownership, and I feel as soon as this is addressed appropriately, and by that I don't mean suggestions and negotiations, it's really like a solid transfer, a rightful transfer of ownership, instead of questioning the skill set of Africans.
So when she talks ownership, it's a big word, especially when you're talking mining, because we don't own our land as black people. White people own our land, but in rightful terms, it's our land. Now, as young miners, when it comes to ownership and these minerals being mined from our land, but going overseas and coming back and being sold to us or being sold to the world for exorbitant amounts. And how do you guys feel as far as that's concerned as young people in mining?
Look, when it comes to ownership, I think that how we've gone about addressing the challenges around ownership is a bit backward, because we're trying to own mines that have been owned by other people. There's still over $1 trillion worth of minerals in our ground that is untouched, that we can take full ownership of.
So when you say in our ground, you mean in Africa?
In South Africa. In
Okay.
South Africa.
Okay.
You know, $1 trillion that we can own outright without having to knock on the doors of people who want to exclude us. I mean, this is what we're actually into, where we actively invest in mining operations that will bear our names, that won't be inherited from someone else, that won't be a part of a triple BEE function or to fill a BEE post. We are actively trying to own the operations on which we want to work and where we want to set up our business.
And what's difficult about owning such?
You know, funding. Funding is always going to be a difficult issue, but around funding, you know, there's mechanisms that you can use. You know, you can move around. It's just unfortunate that we didn't receive the information we needed initially to enable us to get at those resources. But once we got that information and once we were empowered, and trust me, you won't be empowered by school, you'll be empowered by those people that we look up to, those business leaders that we look up to.
But do you think a lot of them are willing to empower?
Yes, they are. It's unfortunate that they're a little bit hard to get a hold of, but once you do get a hold of them, they will sit you down and they will draw you a roadmap into mine ownership and how you can actually tap into those resources that will enable you to set up your own operation.
Is South Africa still a good country for outside companies to invest in?
It is still a good country. From a mining perspective, South Africa
Yeah, from the mining perspective.
it's the most developed, the most sophisticated mining district on the continent. And our argument always is that South Africa actually is the greatest gateway into African mining, because we have in the gold industry, for instance, we've been mining gold for over 100 years. We are some of the deepest mines. But other districts on the continent still have gold that's shallower. So obviously, these skills that we have in South Africa, it's an opportunity for us to expand them beyond our borders. So South African mining history and the system that we've built in South Africa are actually a resource for the entire continent, because we have similar minerals in other portions of the continent that are not as deep or as complex as the ones that we have in South Africa. So that's what we're building on as young people, to say we have been doing this as South Africa for so long. You know, between us and Zimbabwe, we control 80% of the platinum reserves of the world. We've been mining platinum longer than Zimbabwe. The idea is that then you move these skills that we have in South Africa and expand them into Zimbabwe. Gold can be done similarly, sharing the experiences between Ghana and South Africa, and many other minerals that we have. So South Africa is still a good investment destination. Obviously, it will change its role, because of its level of development.
Yeah.
So it should not necessarily be an exporting market forever. It will change its role. It might not necessarily be a physical mining industry, but the skills that we've built in this country and the heritage that we've built in mining can be exported into other countries on the continent before we even look at markets beyond the African border.
A lot of small construction companies always relying on your Group 5s,
Yes.
your Basil Reeds of this world forever. It's been
Yeah.
decades and decades.
That's right.
When policy changed, when we got our freedom,
Yeah.
BEE came in and certain people were just there so these guys can comply. But are you always going to get work and be referred to they call them the Big Fives?
Yeah, the Big Five.
The Big Five?
Yes.
All of the time to work with them. When are we going to grow our own Big Fives?
I think to a certain extent, personally, I think we're too dependent on some of these guys. I think at some point we need to, really just be brave and take a leap of faith and really start building our own stuff and not necessarily rely on them so much. Although I think it is an injustice for government to constantly use those particular companies who have, grown so big over the years, where there is other black companies out there with level grade 9 CIDBs who are capable of doing the work.
Thank you very much for visiting the country and thank you for coming to the show. Give and thank you, my brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
TK Mthokhozisi and our sister Olebogeng.